Hello, cozy detectives, and welcome to the Blanket Fort Files. I'm Joy,
And I'm Larissa.
and we're here to report on all things comfy and cozy. Larissa, hello.
It's
We've
been
been
so
talking this
long.
whole time before, but pretend we haven't talked. Tell me about your life.
I
What's
know. Well,
new?
it's like, yes, we were talking for quite a bit before actually hitting the record button, but we haven't sat
I
down for a
know.
couple of
We try
weeks.
not
So
to. But tell me
it's so
about the
good to see
watermelon.
you.
You said you were wanting watermelon?
Yes, um, it's again one of those multi timeline things,
So
but
true. The fall leaves
um,
are a lie.
yes, but it's still very much summer in our real life. But I had this craving for watermelon today. My sister just came back with groceries and she had a watermelon. And I was like, oh, did you get that for me? And she was like, no, I already planned it before you said that, but you can have some.
Oh, that's so funny. I could not hear that through the
Her
headphones.
part. Yep.
I know I've been
So,
having kiwis because I feel like
ooh,
the vitamin C, and I feel like it's so funny because I feel like I don't know if it's the like southern in me that just like. But how do you eat a kiwi? I feel like maybe I eat it
ooh.
weird,
I feel like this is could be controversial. I don't know.
right?
I feel I'm not a huge kiwi fan.
Mm.
It always makes my tongue feel, maybe I'm allergic, I don't know, but it
That's
makes
me
my
with
tongue feel
melons,
weird.
with specifically the whatever the green one is. That
Mhm.
might I can't
Oh,
do that.
honeydew, which I
Yeah.
love.
Oh, really? I
Mhm.
get scratchy throat. Do you get a scratchy throat with kiwis?
No, it's not that. It just I feel like I still love kiwi, but I think just texturally sometimes
I could see
it's weird.
that.
But how I eat it, I usually get a spoon and I scoop out the middle from the skin. How do
But
you
do you
eat
cut
it?
it in half first?
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, that's what I do. I
Okay.
watched somebody talk about how, like, it was so complicated to eat, and they were, like, peeling it like you would an orange, and I was like, "Why?
Mm,
So complicated." So,
right?
okay, that makes me feel a little bit better, but also, like, it's like the banana thing where people will be like, "No, you're supposed to eat a banana like this because this is the way that,
Right, the
apes
monkeys eat
eat
it.
it." Yeah, and I'm like, "I don't eat it that way. I just, like, do
Right.
the ye old regular way, not upside
Yep.
down for those who don't know about the apparent correct way to eat a banana." But yeah, what else has been going on in your life besides watermelon vibes?
Well, I don't want to spoil too much of my 2%, but I have been deep in the throes of the Olympics.
Fun.
I am not into sports. I'm not really into patriotism, but when it's the Olympics, oh, I
You're just
just
in it.
love it. I watch it as much as I can. I either watch live streams or replays whenever it's available. I eat it up.
It's so fun. I know. I think it's just because I don't have cable that I my Olympics watching has been via the interwebs,
Mm,
meaning like typically through like Instagram or something.
yeah.
But I'm not as caught up as you are. But it's been really fun to watch like swimming and it's like my two favorite. Well, actually, that's a lie. So I like swimming. I like gymnastics, obviously, and I actually really
Mhm.
liked beach volleyball.
Ooh,
Watching that
yes,
was
that
really
one's
fun.
so fun. I so you mentioned cable. We specifically will do a free trial of like Peacock or
Mm,
Sling or whatever way, just so we can get
smart,
it all consuming for 2 weeks.
smart.
So Peacock did a free trial through Instacart Plus. So we were able to get two
Oh,
weeks, which is the exact amount of time for
nice.
free Olympics total coverage. So it worked out
Ooh.
perfectly.
Which ones are your favorites? I'm guessing gymnastics, obviously.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. I had a work thing yesterday during the women's all around
Mm.
final. And so I was like, I'm not on Instagram all day. No one texts me the spoilers. I had to go pick us up lunch and they were playing at a restaurant. And I was like, don't look, don't look, don't look.
Aw.
But yeah, I love gymnastics. I obviously love swimming. I really love diving as
Oh,
well.
true. Yeah, I think I just
Um,
clumped those together. I should separate them, but my brain's
right.
like, "You're in the water, it's the same thing."
I This year, I don't know if you've heard anything, but I've gotten so into women's rugby.
I knew you were gonna say that. I knew it, I knew it, I knew it. So I was like, "Dang it, I
It's
forgot to say
so
rugby."
good.
Yeah,
I
I get
love
really
it.
confused of all of it. Like, I had a friend I used to work with that he did, like a local rugby team, and I
Oh,
like went to see them,
cool.
and I'm like, this is wild. They're like lifting and like throwing each other, and I'm like, what is
Right?
happening here? This is not football.
It's
I don't get
so
it.
intense, and
It is.
I am just my mind is blown that they don't wear any sort of
Oh, I
protective
know.
gear. Like,
It's
maybe
wild.
some knee pads, maybe a headgear, mouth guard, but I'm like, this is so much more violent than
Very much
soccer, than
so.
football. Like, they tackle and they keep going, which is what I love because I can never get into football, mostly for the start and stop of it all.
Oh, yeah, I could see that.
And I love rugby, and especially Olympics. It's like less than 20 minutes, in and out. The action keeps going. I eat it
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, I like football and I like soccer as well, but I feel like I don't know, it is a much longer commitment to it, and
Mm-hmm.
for obvious reasons. They've had it be like very much so less physical interactions with football, I feel like over the
Mm-hmm.
last whatever many years, because like football was also one of those where like if you look back at their like equipment in like the 40s or 50s, it's just like a leather tiny little leather hat that they're wearing, and I'm
Right.
like, that's not protecting you from nothing. Like that's
Yeah.
not okay.
What about you? How's your week been?
It's been good. It's been good. I've been basically just like prepping. I feel like summer is coming to a close, and I feel like fall is coming. It is just early August for us as recording this, and I feel it in me bones. So I feel like I'm in the throes of swapping out things. And I've had these leaves up. If you're watching, I have like some fall leaves. Actually, it's really funny that you can see. Let me see if I can point to it. But this is just squished into the door because I forgot to like do it up, and I'm like, whatever, you will close. But I feel like I'm in the decorating vibes of things. I just need to like actually do it. I feel like the prep decorating, you know what I mean? Like I feel like
Mm-hmm.
with embroidery, I'm like drawing, and I'm like, okay, we're rocking
All
and
the
rolling
play.
now with it. I'm feeling it. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Nice. And
So,
this is really your season. We're getting
ah, I
into
love it.
the time of joy.
I love it. I love it. I really do. It is that life begins again when it gets crisp in the fall. Like that is me to a T. I feel like I wake back up for sure. And I love
Mm-hmm.
summer too, but I just feel like, as we've said over and over, I feel like it's the heat of it that I just kind of like
Truly.
cocoon. And then as soon as that heat like breaks, I'm like, okay, let's start exploring and going places.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's the time where I want to hike because I'm like, give me the fall leaves versus like it's
Right.
just hot out here in these streets. So
Yeah, that's how I, because work wise, fall is typically the busiest time for me,
mm-hmm.
but just socially, mentally, energy wise, I feel more alive in the fall because I think the
Yeah.
same thing with the heat. I just want to be inside all the time.
Yeah.
And then when it cools off, I'm like, let's do activities.
Right? I know. I'm like, I wonder what about me equals that. I don't know, but I love it. So I'm excited to hear the backgrounds of things because this is our case files this week have to do with different Nora Ephron films.
So
And I'm very
excited.
excited because I'd never really done too much research on her before this. Also, I
Hmm.
was telling Larissa beforehand, not gonna lie, sometimes her and Nancy Myers in my brain before doing the research for the Cozy Detectives, because now we will have two different episodes about these
Hmm.
amazing, like
Icons.
iconic women. I didn't know 100% who did what. Like I would flip flop
Hmm.
them all the time in my mind. But now doing some more research on Nora Ephron, I am excited to see what you found about your case file and about her in general. And I feel like I have so many fun like little nuggets to share. So do you want to go first about your Nora Ephron history and then I'll jump in?
Yes. So, just very basic general. She was alive from 1941 to 2012, and she was a journalist, a writer, and a filmmaker, most well known for her rom coms, which we will get into two
Love.
specific ones. So, I don't think I knew until doing more research how much of a writer journalistic background she
Yeah.
had before getting into the film industry. So she was born in New York, but actually grew up in Beverly Hills, and she was the eldest of four sisters. And there's other facts that I'll share, but just I think throughout her life, and especially in her movies, that comes across in so many of her characters of just being these really
Yeah.
strong, full charactered women. So I think just growing up with a lot of sisters definitely shaped how she approaches writing, how she approaches creating films. And she attended Wellesley College, which, if you didn't know, is a all women's college, which I always love and tell my students to go to women's colleges because I think they do really amazing things.
Yeah.
And she actually got a degree in political science. So, nothing really to do with writing. And after graduating, she was a intern at the White House for John F. Kennedy, which also was a unique
Yeah, that's interesting.
revelation
That
for
did not come
me.
up in mine. Yeah.
So, definitely started out in sort of the political sphere and then wanted to be a writer for Newsweek, but was told they don't hire women writers. So, again, I think that inconsistency or inequality for women definitely shaped how she approaches her women's characters in a lot of her films. So she participated in a class action lawsuit for sexual discrimination against Newsweek, and then did pieces for the New York Post, Esquire, Cosmopolitan, several other periodicals, and then started working on film scripts. And the first one that she worked on, while it wasn't selected, it was a rewrite of a script for All the President's Men, which, if any of our Gilmore fans are listening, they'll probably recognize that because it's
Yeah.
mentioned quite a bit on the show. But I also didn't know this, that she was married to Carl Bernstein of Woodward and Bernstein, who that movie is about.
Yeah, she has had a very, very interesting life, both I was gonna say like on and off screen, even though she's been behind the scenes. But one thing that I saw in my research, what she was talking about is as a writer, because that's something that she has basically always had in her heart. And she loved the path that she took of journalism and then doing, what does she call it? It was like, oh, freelance writing and then
Mm-hmm.
going into the movies as a writer for that. Is that she kind of changed career paths about every 10 years. And
Mm-hmm.
that for me, I don't know, it was kind of freeing because I feel like in generations before her, one, it was typically more just like a stay-at-home mom, which there's nothing wrong with that, but she saw her mom do both and she wanted to do both. And I think that that
Mm-hmm.
was so cool. Also, in my research that I saw, she was talking about the women's movement. So she left the writing at the New York Post in the 70s to be a freelance writer. She was almost the movie critic and almost the book critic, but she was like, I don't want to do that. She's like, I really
I
enjoy
just want
going
to
to the
make them
movies.
instead.
Exactly, exactly. So she asked if she could write about the women's movement. And the quote that I have from her written down is, I got to do all the things I secretly wanted to do, like go to the Pillsbury Bake Off. And it was a great couple of years for me. So I thought it was really, I think, like you were saying, it shows how well rounded she writes these characters, even for the fact that, like, the small, small characters she'll give lines to so that they're people as well in this
Right.
universe. And I really
Mm-hmm.
like that she talked about, like, one of the movies I think writes women very well was the first Wonder Woman, because she's obviously such a strong character as being Wonder Woman, but she sees this small baby and she's like, oh, baby. And I just feel like that moment for me was such a good, well rounded character. And I feel like something that Nora did excellently, like with like most excellence, is seeing both sides of these characters and giving them real reasons for doing things, even the side characters.
Mm-hmm.
Because in my case file, there's one character that she talked about specifically that's literally just there to deliver the paper, but she gave him a couple lines because she was like, he's also a person. So
Right.
I loved that.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. Another thing that her mom would always say, it seemed like the how do I explain this well? Their relationship was like a little bit tricky between her and her mom. But one thing that her mom always said that she quoted a lot was everything is copy. And so I found that very interesting that even in her life, if she went through something difficult, it would be like, well, how can I make this funny? Like, how can I write this in a way that's very entertaining and very interesting
Mm-hmm.
to see? And even to the fact that in her personal life, she went through a couple really, really hard things and she wrote them into funny scripts. Or in
Yeah, I was seeing that too.
yeah, like she has a honestly, she's one of the, in interviews that I watched of her all the way through, she has one of the most funny senses of humor. She called somebody once, what was it? It was like, I like paused it and laughed out loud because like one of the funniest things I've heard, she called somebody a chocolate covered spider. And I was like,
Wow.
that's hilarious. Like whether you like that person or not, I just thought that that was such like a
Yeah,
funny
that's
thing.
funny. And I think that's such a good testament too in her
Yeah.
movies is she has that good balance of the
Yes.
drama and the comedy, which
Yes.
everything goes back to Gilmore Girls, but that's one of the reasons I
Yes.
love that show so much
Hmm.
is that delicate balance. And I think she creates that in her movies so well.
Absolutely. One thing I also found funny that she took as a nugget from her mom is her mom would say a round table is the only table that's good for a dinner party. And I was like, you know what? I kind of get
Oh,
that because if you have everybody in
truly.
like a long line, how are you supposed to communicate with them? Like you can't see their
Hmm.
faces, you can't do these things. And in the movies, looking at them, she either has like an oval or like some type of like rounded table when she's having a group of people. And I just love that she brought pieces of her life into her movies in such like a beautiful
Hmm.
way. And then also for the fact that for her to get into screenwriting, she was in her 40s. And I just think that that also, I just love that because I feel like when you think of people, when you're like, oh, they're so accomplished, like for me, I'll just like picture them like in their 30s or something, or like in their 20s.
Right.
And I'm like, what am I doing? Like every 10 years, she would change and move careers. And she was in like her late 40s, in her 50s, doing these amazing projects that we love and know. And I just think it's a great testament to the fact that she just kept going and she just kept doing it.
Right.
And like, you can keep going, you can keep doing it. And
Hmm.
I just love
And
that.
that's
She seems
that.
so wonderful of a person.
No, I agree. And I was just going to say that is also one of the elements of my case file is just like
Yes,
finding success later in life. So I'm excited to get
absolutely.
into them if you want
Yes.
to start us off.
Yes, my case file is Sleepless in Seattle. Honestly, again, from doing research about this movie, I went away from the research liking the movie more than I did even originally, which I think again is a great testament to it. So if you haven't seen Sleepless in Seattle, it is the second movie, believe it or not, that Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan were in as the opposite
Yeah.
characters, but not opposite characters, but like opposite of each other. But their first movie was not as popular as this. So it's so interesting to me that she found these two actors that at the time were really kind of unknowns. Like Tom Hanks, she talks about how this movie is one that he really kind of like, not like became a man in, but like he's a father in this movie. It's something that
Hmm.
he hadn't done before, and how he just so willingly and like well done stepped up to the role and made these characters so real and well rounded as people. And so the kind of a little bit of a plot of the movie is after his wife Maggie passed away, Sam Baldwin and his 8-year-old son Jonah relocate from Chicago to Seattle to escape the grief associated with Maggie's death. That one's from IMDb. But basically, so they move, and a year later his son calls into this radio station and is kind of trying to be like, okay, my dad needs a girlfriend or something, like, because
Right.
he's just kind of cocooning and this doesn't work for me. And so he calls into the radio station. It obviously, it's so funny to like think about, but like it goes viral in this radio station. And women all around the country are listening to this dad kind of talk through what he's going through. And he, again, the wording is just so beautiful. It is something that very similarly to Gilmore Girls feels like the writer. Like hearing Nora in interviews talk, I'm like, absolutely. Like Meg Ryan and the like positivity and like kind of bubbly character that she plays in these movies really seems to be who Nora is as a person. And so, speaking of, Meg Ryan is the main character in this movie, Annie, and Annie lives in New York City, I believe.
Hmm.
And or no, she doesn't. Maybe she lives in Chicago. I don't 100% remember. But at the very very end, they're kind of writing back and forth. She doesn't realize, but she's actually writing with his son. She's not writing with him. And so
Right.
at one point she flies out to Seattle to meet him and sees him and kind of panics and then leaves. And it's a very interesting movie when you look at it through the lens of the point of this one is it's based off of a an affair to remember kind of loosely, even for the fact
Oh,
that
okay.
some of even for the fact of some of the score will be in it, which I'll say in a second. But Two, the way that Nora described it is it's kind of like a romantic movie from the eyes of a woman versus the eyes of a man, because in the movie, Meg Ryan's character, like they watch An Affair to Remember. She loves that movie. She loves the romanticized versions of it. And seeing it through Nora's eyes a little bit more and the why of it made so much sense to me. Also for the fact that Nora didn't write the script from like the very, very scratch beginning. She was the third or fourth person to get the script and kind of
Hmm.
look through it. But one, there was an entirely different group of people associated with the movie, but two, it had no humor in it. So the characters
Oh.
weren't really fleshed out. They were
Hmm.
kind of like they had the ending, which I am going to say spoilers because we're in the
It's
90s
from
here.
the 80s. Let's
Yeah.
go.
We're
Or
right in
90s.
this.
Sorry, it's 90s
Yeah,
because I
it's
did for
really
90s
early
dads.
90s.
But
Yeah.
yes.
93. Um, but they meet at the very, very end at the top of the Empire State Building, which, again, when Meg Ryan's character is running to go to the Empire State Building, that soundtrack that you're hearing is the exact soundtrack from An Affair to
Oh,
Remember,
I
to the
never knew
point
that.
where I know, right? I'm like, okay, well, I don't even know if I've specifically seen An Affair to Remember. So sorry for the Codes Detectives if that's one of your favorites. Let us know. Because now I actually want to see it even more so, because it is one of those classic Hollywood movies. And Nora dug through the archives in Los Angeles to find that really, really old, like reel. I'm not gonna say that word right, but whatever, however you phrase that, the like sound reel of it, made
Hmm.
one copy and then it disintegrated. And she was like, this is meant to be in the movie. This
Wow.
has to be at the ending. It is just like the
That's
perfect
so
ending
cool.
song. Yeah. And I love that that is in there. To go back a little bit to the script, the thing that she added to the script, like the most from, well, not the most, I'm not going to phrase that correctly, but basically she brought herself into it and like bringing these characters well rounded, adding a lot more of the dialogue, adding the humor into it, and adding background things that didn't even necessarily move the plot forward, but made more sense if you look at the movie as a whole. In the fact of there is a character in the movie that there's very few like main characters in it, but they're sitting around a circle table. And the main character Sam is talking, and he's talking to Greg, and I can't remember what Greg's wife is, but he's talking to them around this round table, and she's just discussing all of the like history of why she loves these romantic movies. And I think that background of that, knowing Nora Ephron's like different viewpoints of what a romantic movie is, just makes the whole plot more well-rounded, which I really
Hmm.
loved. And I feel like the fact that she does write the working through grief part of it so well, and I think Tom does a great job of portraying that through the screen and kind
100%.
of
Yeah.
like the different stages of things and trying to like kind of move on, but like how do you even move on from something like that, like just somebody that you loved so much. It's just I again, I walked away from the research of this liking this movie even more than I did when I first watched it, and I feel like that's a great
Hmm.
testament to a writer's description of something that you're watching.
Hmm.
um
Agreed.
so I loved it so much. I think those are like basically the main facts that I have about it, just
Yeah.
in like the behind the scenes of it. But I think looking through it through Nora's eyes of this was her second movie that she had directed, but she also like directed this too, which I think is so cool. And such something where she was talking about like if you really love a movie as a screenwriter and you really, really want it to like be in your eyes, being able to also direct it and having the opportunity to do that is such like a wonderful combination of things.
Hmm.
And I think that that's something as well, kind of connecting this over to Nancy Meyers as well, is of like you can feel it feels a little bit different. Now this was her first one, so she was kind of, well, not first, but like first
They're
big.
doing both.
Mm-hmm. And so I feel like you can kind of feel the nitty gritty of it. And something that she said as well that I thought you would like is when she thinks about movies that she's like, when she's looking back on that time period, she thinks of
Hmm.
the food. Which I
Oh,
thought was,
cute. That
yeah,
comes out in mine for sure.
yeah,
um,
absolutely.
but yeah, that's something too, because she also wrote and directed mine. And we talked a little bit about this, I think, in our Nancy Meyers episode, but I feel like that has to be hard sometimes for screenwriters when they have to pass it along to a director,
It's a
because
lot of faith.
if they're not completely
Yeah.
linked up, synced up, then the director can really change the vision, the
Yeah.
vibe. So I always just wonder how writers feel
Yeah.
once they see the final product of, oh, this is even better than I was envisioning, or this is not what I wanted. So I'm always
Yeah.
curious about that. So if you're a screenwriter or you know
Yeah, let
any,
us know. That feels like
yeah.
so much faith to put into somebody because it's kind of like your baby. But one of the things that she talked about is like once you have like that, like the cast, like this is obviously the
Mm-hmm.
cast, this is like the perfect people to portray these characters. You kind of also give a little bit of that freedom to them of things of like, how do you feel about this? Or like, what does
Mm-hmm.
this look like? Does this feel real to your character? And then one other fun fact I just remembered is that Seattle obviously is notorious for rain. So they were like, okay, it'll rain at some point and we'll just record then. But Seattle was actually in a drought that year.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah,
they
there
had
aren't
to
really
like,
a lot of rainy seasons, or there are, but like, I'm assuming they were manufactured.
they did. Yeah. They had to go in and like pretend that Seattle was rainy during the scenes that you see in there that it's rainy in. And the apartment that her and her husband, I believe at the time she said, rented near, like when she was filming there, was right near the market, the like very famous
Oh,
Pikes Peak, unless I'm
mm-hmm.
losing it,
Yeah.
market. And like that's the memory that she has. So it's really fun because I got the opportunity to go to Seattle once to kind of walk through that
Oh,
market, and
cool.
I could see how that would be the memory because that's the memory that I have of it. Of just kind of walking through the
Mm-hmm.
market. It's very like everything is fresh. It feels like you're like in the city. It honestly does feel in the best way of saying this, like a romanticized version of life, kind of. And
I
for
get
her,
that sometimes, even if I'm just walking through Central Market.
right, right, honestly, and
I'm like,
I
oh,
love
I'm in
it.
a little European
Yeah.
store, just getting my ingredients for dinner.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, and I feel like that just shows so beautifully through her films about taking the beautiful parts of life and the humor of it and the sorrow of it and kind of
Mm-hmm.
blending those and just
All the parts.
yeah, and having these characters be real people and that being her personal memory of each of the films. So, speaking of food, I feel like this is the perfect transition. Larissa, tell us about your case
Yes.
file.
This one is very just near and dear to my heart and my
Love
life's
it.
work now. But if you couldn't tell, my case file is Julie and Julia. It is the 2009 biographical dramedy about renowned chef Julia Child, who is played by icon, legend,
Icon.
the best, the GOAT, Meryl Streep, and Julie Powell, who is a blogger or was a blogger who cooked her way through Julia Child's cookbook, played by another icon, Amy Adams. Like
Also, just in
this,
general, what a feat. What a feat.
right,
Like when I found out this was real, I was like, how is this real? Who is
right,
this? Like,
because
whew.
as someone who is cooking her way through something,
Yeah.
the fact, so this jumps a little bit ahead of my notes, but she actually accomplishes the goal, but it is 524 recipes in
Oh my gosh.
365 days. That's more than one a day. That's
That's wild.
wild to me. Like,
Wild.
I
And she had a
just,
job. Like,
right,
you know what I
a
mean? Like,
full-time
that's what
job.
I've always thought about with you too. I'm like, girl, you working and you're also like, what can I make out of like the Gilmore Girls verse? And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, that's so fun.
Well, and so I mean, I just crossed 200 dishes a few weeks ago, and it's been almost 4 years. And she did over 500 in 1 year. It
That
hurts my brain a little bit to think
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. But also the stress that we see throughout the movie of that character makes a little bit more sense to me
Hmm.
now because like, yeah, if you destroy something, you're like, well, there goes a day of me supposed to be doing 2 recipes. Like,
Right. And that was something that kind of frustrated me in reading some of the reviews and even more recent Reddit threads about the movie is that they didn't like Julia's side. It's also, I'm going to be mixing them up all the time. I got to
for
keep
the
them
same
straight.
name. Yeah.
But Julia's side of the story, a lot of people didn't like, and her book that the movie is based off of did receive pretty mixed reviews.
Interesting. What was the
Um,
critique?
so for the movie, a lot of people thought her character was really whiny and annoying, and but like the point that
I'm
you
like,
make, this is a
yeah.
hard
Yeah.
thing to do. She's also turning 30, which is a big milestone that you and I recently went through. And I think now turning 30 is a lot more socially, you're still pretty hip and young, but this is set in 2002. So that was considered ancient at the time,
She's also
And
in a
so,
relationship. She's also working
right.
in like a very stressful like I'm very interested to see how accurate the movie was in your research because I'm
It
like, oh,
Yeah, it was, I mean, down to her job was the same. So if
really?
you have, those of you listening who have not seen the movie or read the book, so it's actually based on two books, which I'll talk about in a second. But I guess just really quickly, so I kind of gave an
Sorry,
overview.
I digressed right in.
No, you're good. But the film goes, it's kind of based on two books. So the book that Julia wrote about her experience in her blog, and then also a book by Julia Child, which is an autobiography called My Life in Paris. And
Hmm.
so it's based on those two books. So the Julia's book doesn't really get into the life of Julia Child the way the movie does. So Nora kind of combined the two books to tell the story. So the film goes back and forth between two timelines. So Julia living in Paris in the 1950s, she attends cooking school, Le Cordon Bleu,
Also Stanley
and
Tucci.
that's her husband.
So good.
Iconic. I
I
love
love that
him so
guy.
much. Oh, one
Him
of
and
my
his like
favorite
little cooking
actors.
apron too. He's
Yes.
I love how
Oh,
much he loves
I
Italy.
I
I love it.
haven't watched his food short or read his food
Oh,
memoir, but
he's
I
in
want
it.
to so
In it.
bad. I just need to make time for it. Which is also their second time casting together because obviously Devil Wears Prada,
Another iconic.
so
Everything's iconic.
good.
It's like you can't oversay that
You
word.
can't go wrong
Yeah,
with Meryl Streep and Stanley Tucci by no means.
honestly.
And so we kind of mentioned this with Nora and getting into films later on. So the, Julia Child started her cooking career very, very Julia Child. See, I'm already mixing it up. I think I said
It's
Julia Powell.
you're
If you're
fine.
listening,
There's too
you'll
many
know who I'm
words.
talking
Yeah, we
about.
gotcha.
Just you'll try to keep track. Maybe I should just say Child and Powell. That might
Yeah,
help.
there you go. I didn't even think of that.
But so she starts her cooking journey like in her 40s, and doesn't really start getting big until much later on in life. So I really like that part of the movie of
Yeah.
you can mix it up at any point in your life and still find success or find happiness, even if it's
Mhm.
not the same level of fame as, Julia
But, like, how
Child.
fun,
But
like, how freeing
yeah.
to be, like even Nora Ephron herself being, like, every 10 years, if you can, like, if you can make it work just to keep
Hmm.
yourself she actually said, like, to keep yourself a little bit uneasy and a little scared. I'm like,
Oh,
"Yes,
wow.
girl, get it." Like, because you just get comfortable after a while in something, and so just
Hmm.
to kinda mix it up. Even if it's a
Yeah.
similar vibe, it's still mixing it up for
Something
sure, and
fresh. Hmm.
yeah.
So that's one half of the timeline, and the other half focuses on Julie Powell. And she is working in New York. So just after 9/11, it's this call center, and she has to take calls from people that were injured or passed away
Ugh,
in the accident. So that's a
ugh,
very just
so
emotionally
heavy.
draining job. But that was what she was actually doing in
That's
real life.
wild.
Hmm. So then she starts this blog because she's just really unhappy in her life and decides, I want to cook through this cookbook, which the Julia Child side of the movie is kind of the process of publishing that book called Mastering the Art of French Cooking. And it was published in 1961. And I have a little story about finding this book in Paris.
Like, you personally?
Hmm.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
obsessed already. Wait, tell me everything.
So when I went to Paris on a college trip, I think we kind of talked about that in a previous episode. But my friend Sarah and I really, really wanted to find Shakespeare and Company.
I
For
love
those of
that.
you who don't know what that is, it is an English bookstore in Paris. It's pretty
Super.
iconic.
Yeah.
But this was kind of really before iPhones really were readily available. Like I think she had one, but didn't really have service. So we were hiking it around with a little paper map for like 2 hours in the rain trying to find this bookstore. And then somehow we just managed to finally find it. And we were so excited. So we were just browsing through. and I saw the cookbook and I'm like, this is one of my favorite movies. I love cookbooks. I'm in Paris, like I have to get it. So I was very excited. And they even, you get a little like official
Little
stamp that you
stamp.
got it from the store. And kind of a fun fact, that started my tradition. So every time I go on a trip, I get a cookbook from that location.
Ooh, I love that. What a you tradition. I love it. Obsessed
It's very
in
me.
it.
Yeah. So I just have this little
I go thrifting.
collection, right?
So,
Also very you. Oh, that's
yeah.
so cool. But yeah, I have a little collection of just cookbooks from all over the world.
Oh, I
So that's
love
where that
that.
started. Hmm.
Oh, that's so sweet. Do you still have that cooked? Have you cooked anything out of it?
A couple different things,
Wow.
some potato dishes,
Oh,
lots of butter, which we'll get into.
yeah. Also, that's a
Um,
Nora Ephron thing too. She's obsessed with butter. That was like one of her things that she loved was
mm,
butter. So
so that probably she saw her
right.
Julia's love of butter was like, I must make this a movie. But that actually kind of lends into one of my little tidbits about Nora working on this movie. It was really important to her that the actors actually ate the food while filming so that their reactions would be genuine because like you mentioned food's really important to her, but there is a lot of food in this movie. It's
Yeah.
important to both sides of the story. And Amy Adams was actually pregnant while filming this movie.
Oh no, which is one of those moments where you're like, I really don't want to eat this, or I will eat
Right.
everything.
Yeah. And so it's kind of, so if you don't know that, like while watching it, she's constantly making kind of jokes of, oh, this project's making me fat or whatever, but it's just because
I
Amy
didn't
was
catch that.
pregnant.
Oh, that's so funny. I never caught that.
Hmm. So that was really important to her. And I have a quote from Julia Child. So I do have a little bit of insight to her life too, just because she is, you know, a pretty well known person. But in talking about food and particularly her use of butter and cream, because she was criticized a lot for that, she said, everybody is overreacting. If fear of food continues, it will be the death of gastronomy in the United States. Fortunately, the French don't suffer from the same hysteria we do. We should enjoy food and have fun. It is one of the simplest and nicest pleasures in life.
So agree. 100%. Mo
Mm-hmm.
butter, mo goodness.
Right, right. So I'm just, it's one of those things. And so this is really when I think diet culture was super taking over and
Good point.
she was just not having any of that.
Yeah.
Um, but in terms of the kind of critiques of
Mhm.
the movie and specifically the book. So part of the movie, again, they thought Julie Powell's, I think I got that mixed up earlier, but they thought her
Okay.
side was just very kind of a whining and annoying. And again, like I said, this is a very hard feat to accomplish.
Yeah.
I would like when she drops the aspic on the floor, I would have a
Exactly what I was
breakdown
thinking.
too,
Yep.
100%. Like I made one of my favorite Gilmore dishes was Suki's lobster bisque, and I was eating the last bowl. Like I already filmed it, took photos, but I went to go eat the last bowl and I dropped it on the floor and I started crying because this is my favorite soup I had
Oh.
ever had. And I didn't get to eat the last bowl of it. So
Yeah,
I
food
think
is a
she's very
very
valid.
emotional thing in like a good way, but also in like I've done one Thanksgiving turkey in my life, and I'll tell you what, never have I been more stressed than trying to make a Thanksgiving turkey.
Mm-hmm.
So, like holding it and then dropping it on the floor, no. I
Devastating.
would be like, I'm losing it. I need
Right.
help. SOS.
Truly. And then for the book, because it was based on a blog, which, fun fact, this is the first movie that was based on a blog
Ooh.
ever, which I thought was kind of interesting because now I feel like we're almost past blogging to an extent. So this was still an up and coming, I guess, medium. But a lot of the critiques specifically about her book were that it felt too stream of conscious, too
Interesting.
which is very kind of how a blog is, and they didn't like
Yeah.
that style. So I haven't read it yet, but it almost made me want to read it more because
Yeah.
I love that kind of behind the scenes thought process
Me
around
too.
things. So I definitely hope to read that soon. But something that I think is a little sad. So in the movie, um, Julie Powell that Julia Child doesn't really like the project and the blog, and that actually happened in real life.
Oh,
She didn't like the way she described food. She didn't like her bad language.
that's
Um,
heartbreaking.
I
You're like,
know.
I'm doing
So
this
to
whole
find out that was
project.
right, and to so I feel like, just as someone who has put a lot of time and effort into something very similar, if Lauren Graham or Amy Sherman Palladino found out about it and had those things to say, like,
Cry.
I would quit. I
Yep.
wouldn't want to do
Yep.
it
Same.
anymore. So to find out
But
that that actually happened,
in
so sad.
defense of eating Gilmore, it is awesome.
Thank you.
So,
So yeah, that here finding out that that was
and I
real
also,
just really broke my heart.
yeah. And also, I just think, again, for the Gilmore Girls vibes of it, I think they would be obsessed. I think they would love the fact that you're just paying like such a wonderful, is it homage? Is that the word?
Mm-hmm.
To this show and these characters. And like, I think they would love it. So,
Right.
once
And
again,
that's why I
they would
don't
love it.
fully understand why Julia
Yeah.
Child, I guess it was more just the language, but
Mm.
I would, anytime someone makes one of my dishes, I it's the
Yeah.
biggest honor to me. So I feel like, so, you make a cookbook for people to replicate those dishes, and she
Yeah.
went through and did all of them. I guarantee
She's just
you
having a bad
no
day,
one else has
you
done that.
know?
Maybe,
You
maybe.
know? Just a little bit
um
cranky.
but some as better facts about Julia Child, other than her crankiness. She attended Smith College, which is also a women's college.
Oh,
So there's that connection with Nora Ephron, which I really liked.
cute.
And I
And
also didn't
Emily
know this.
Gilmore.
Yes. Field
Just
hockey
throwing that in there.
queen.
Yeah.
I know. I haven't watched any, speaking of the Olympics, I haven't watched any of the field hockey, but every time I'll
Mhm.
get someone talking about it or see that it's on, I'm like, Emily Gilmore.
Emily would kill it. She'd be so good.
Right? Gold medal for sure. But Julia Child also founded the American Institute of Wine and Food, which I thought was like a little fun
Did
fact.
not know that.
And then I didn't put really a lot of information about her TV shows, but she did a lot of cooking for TV. I think she was kind of one of the pioneers of cooking shows.
Yeah.
I watched her growing up,
Me too.
so this love of cooking runs deep. But just kind of as an in memoriam, because all three of these ladies have passed away, unfortunately. So this was Nora Ephron's last film before she died
Oh,
in
I didn't know that.
2012. Julia Child passed away in 2004 to kidney failure. And most recently, Julie Powell sadly died in 2022 due to
Oh.
COVID complications. So
Oh.
not
Oh,
to end
well.
that on a bummer note, but I guess to kind of end a little lighter, I was going to talk about why I find it cozy
Yeah.
personally. I really love the cinematography of this one. I think the colors are very soft and warm, especially those vintage Paris scenes when we go to Julia Child's plotline. I love the relationships in this, so it's very focused on Paul, played by Stanley Tucci, and Julia and their relationship, which Nora Ephron found they were kind of wild in the show.
Yeah. They're so funny.
So she was really kind of surprised about that, finding diary and entries about that, or diary and letters about that. And then Julie and her husband, which I don't have written down and I'm blanking on his name, but their relationship is also a big part of the movie. So I like that. And then, of course, food and my personal connection to this movie as someone also cooking her way through something. So I just love it a lot.
Oh, I love it. And it's so cute too. I feel like though every time I was like doing my research and something would come up about Julie and Julia,
Mm-hmm.
I would be like, no, 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 no. But one thing snuck through, which was the fact that the love that the Julia Child and I don't know what his name is, but her
Paul.
husband Paul.
Mm-hmm.
You just had it 2 seconds ago and my brain forgot.
No, you're fine. The main reason I remember this is so silly, but
No, dude.
there's this scene when she finds out about like her book is getting published, and she's just like, "Paul, Paul, 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 Paul." It just
Oh, you're
always
so
makes me
right.
giggle.
That's so cute. But I saw like when they're sitting there and he's literally like comparing her to butter and she has her little heart and she
Oh,
does this.
the flutter.
Yes, that
Love it.
everybody was saying that from what they could tell, Nora basically wrote that about her and her husband at the time because they just had like
Oh.
that type of a love as well. And so I thought that was such a sweet way to kind of input your life into a film. And also like it
Mm-hmm.
is funny. Like they make Julia Childs like hilarious at certain points of things and
Right. I
like
mean, she was kind of larger. I mean, very much larger than life because she's
yeah.
giant, which if people didn't know this, so Julia Child in real life was 6'2", and Meryl Streep was only like 5'6". So they made her
Yeah.
wear really tall heels. They lowered the counters and then just forced perspective to make her look a lot taller.
So clever. And I'd have believed it. I was like, how did they do that when I was watching
Mm-hmm.
it? So
Right.
I just feel like, yes, I just thought that was such a sweet way to, especially everything that Nora had gone through, like with relationships, to
Mm-hmm.
find that love and then kind of input that a little bit into the movie as well.
Yeah. Kind of like you said with Sleepless, of just incorporating
Yeah.
elements of herself. Yeah, I do really love that quote. I think it's "You're the bread to my butter and the breath to my life," which is going to make me tear up because
So
it's so
good.
sweet.
It is. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like, again, that's just like the love of butter throughout. I just
Yeah.
think it's just,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It's just one of those things where it really does feel cozy. And I feel like even kicking it back a little bit to Sleepless in Seattle, I feel like the way that that is filmed and the love that is for that city, the love that she has for New York, being born there,
Mm-hmm.
Nora, and the way that that is filmed, because that is on film. I actually don't know if Julie and Julia would be on film or maybe they just did like a wonderful job of just the
Digital.
cinematography.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
But
don't know either. I should have
just,
checked.
yeah, you're good. But like, I just feel like the romanticized versions of these things is something that, again, I feel like I'm making it more meta than it should be, but I feel like something for Loris and I of just doing this podcast and having the cozy detectives and having it be a little bit romanticized is
Mm-hmm.
something that can easily get lost in life and is so important. And I feel like
Right. What our
that's
goal
something
is.
that, yeah, something that Nora really loved as well is she was just such a bubbly, wonderful personality, even though she'd gone
Mm-hmm.
through hard things. And
Yeah.
how
Well, and
inspiring. Love it.
I was just going to add something because I didn't even like make this connection to both of our case files, but because there's both two cities that are important, central to the storyline, almost how we talked about with the side characters, the cities are a character in and of themselves, right? You have Seattle,
Absolutely.
New York, and then in yours, and then New York and Paris in mine, that they're just so integral to the story as well.
Yes. And I feel like, again, for us personally, even just the shows that we love, obviously, one particular wink wink, but just having the full fledged out stories, having the town be a story, having each character be a person, having like the clothing be something that's important, and just the details of it, even like the round table aspect of it,
Mm-hmm.
is just, we love details. We love behind the scenes here. We love hard
Yes.
investigating. So,
Love it.
obsessed.
What a good two couple of case files.
Yes, this was like, I'm gonna say this every week now, but I just feel like this was such a fun one to research and learn the behind the scenes of, and just having heard your case file, having done my own research, I feel like it makes me love these
Mm-hmm.
two movies even more than I did.
I agreed. And it's been a while, but this is one that we both knew the other's case file. So that's
Yeah.
fun too. And just in the spirit of everything, this episode is coming out on Joy's birthday. So
Oh.
also very special. Everyone wish Joy a happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
It's, yeah, I love it. I love
So
cozy things.
yes, cozy birthdays.
Yes. Hopefully, I'm having a cozy birthday right now. We'll see.
I bet you will.
So, cozy. Speaking of, what is your 2% cozy?
Yes, so I tease this a little bit. I don't know if the Olympics are necessarily cozy because
It can be.
I'm very much cheering everyone on, but I have been kind of crafting while watching the Olympics.
Ooh.
So something I originally started at the beginning of the year was this crochet project with my reading,
Yes.
where I was making a blanket where every row was a color corresponding to the rating that I gave a book. But about a month ago, I decided to start over
Oh, that's
because
fine.
I it got really uneven and it was just a lot smaller than what I was wanting. It was like more of a baby blanket than an actual blanket. So I've been playing catch up. I'm on April right now, so I'm making good progress. But
Cool.
what's really just kind of special in particular about doing this while watching the Olympics is Do you know about Tom
Yeah,
Daly?
all of a sudden it
Hmm.
clicked. I was like, oh wait, yeah, I know exactly
Yeah.
where she's going.
So those of you who don't know, Tom Daly is a British diver, and every time he's at the Olympics, he knits
How
a
cute.
sweater for
What
it.
a
And
cutie.
he is so talented. Mine's just like this little sad blanket that with like all these errors, and
No, it's
he's
awesome.
doing full cool designs, but he just finished. So
We did.
yeah, it looked really cool. We'll
Cool.
have to share a picture of it or something because I'm just like, he has so many Olympic medals. He just got the full suite. So he has one of each now. I think this is his
Wild.
fifth Olympics. Oh, real quick side story. I saw this is another thing with the Olympics is all the stories of the
Mm.
Olympians always make me cry. So I saw one of him recently and they were interviewing him when he was 13 of, oh, maybe you'll go to the Olympics one day. And he was saying how he really wanted to go to five, which this is his fifth one, so he did it because he was like, I think it would be really cool because a lot of them get the tattoo with their rings to have the year of each one in each of the rings. So
So
I'm
he
really
can do it
excited for him
now.
to get it. Hmm.
Whoa, that's
Yeah,
wild. Wow, I
yeah.
didn't know he'd been to 5.
Mhm.
That's
I
quite
think
a
he
feat
was
in and of
14
itself.
at his first, maybe not 14, 14 or 15,
Whoa.
because yeah, I think it was 14 because the announcers during his dive, they were saying that we've known him for over half his life because he just turned 30. So I think the year after that one was his first, that video was his first Olympics.
Aw, what a little nugget. The only one that I've seen
Hmm.
him knit is it's like a koozie
The
for his.
pouch for it.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's the only one that I've seen with like a little British flag, which was the one that he did this year.
So he will last the Tokyo one and this one. He's done like a full sweater with the
Whoa.
country's flag and the Union Jack.
How
This one says
cool.
Daily on the back. I'll show you pictures of it. He's
Yeah.
so talented.
See, that's something that I've always wanted to do, but my grandma did it, and the only thing I ever actually I might it's off screen, but I have one thing that she knitted me that I still have.
Oh.
But yeah, it's just wow, it's so intricate and so like tricky to
Mm-hmm.
figure out. That's like one of those ones that yeah, goals. So I'm excited to see your
Yep.
blanket. I love that you're doing it. Just you and
Yay.
Tom just chilling.
I know. Little knitting crochet buddies. So
How
what's
cute.
your 2%?
Mine has to do with fall, not surprised. Um, basically, so it's like a twofold because I feel like I'm really getting into the like feels and the vibes of it. I think also because like I need it. You know what I mean? I feel like it's been like love being in the blanket fort with you and our cozy
Mm-hmm.
detectives. Outside of the blanket fort, it's been a pretty tricky season in life. And
Mm-hmm.
so I just need the cozy romanticized vibes of things. So I feel like I've been
Right.
really diving into that a lot this year when it comes to fall specifically. Again, it's been a little bit more off of Instagram and social media, but I have another. I don't have it with me yet because I just got notification that is on the way, and I was like, yes. But I have another one of those little glasses coming that has a little inlays, little
Ooh.
icon glasses. I
Mm-hmm.
got it from Anthropology this time because they had a little leaf one, so I'm excited for
Love.
that to get here. I'm in the vibes of decorating, and I keep thinking I still haven't painted a room, but I want to, and so like that's the
Ooh,
next
that's
thing.
so
I
fun.
want to do that yellow that you and I keep talking about. So
Mm-hmm.
just because it feels like a potentially overwhelming project, I want it to be fun, not overwhelming. I'm thinking like
Right.
the washer dryer room because it's so tiny.
Oh, well, and I mean, you talked about that with the air dry clay of wanting
Yeah,
to kind of cutify that space.
right.
So
And I
I
have
think
the
that's
air
a good
dry
place to
clay in there,
start.
right? And the air dry clay's in there, and it's
Perfect.
like the only cute part of the room. And I'm like, I want to like make this fun. So those are kind of
Love
my
it.
little aspects of things, kind of point
Hmm.
fives all added together to two. But that
No, that's
is
so
my main
fun.
2% this
Oh,
year,
I love
this
it.
week.
Our whole year is becoming 100% cozy with my podcast.
I'll take it.
Love it. All right. Well, you can find us on Instagram at Blanket Fort Files Pod, and be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. We'd appreciate your feedback, so please leave us a review because it truly helps us out. And join us next week in the Blanket Fort, where we'll discuss the coziness of Studio Ghibli movies.
Very fall vibes with these movies.
Truly, one of my favorite movies, just in general, is the one I'm talking about. So, very excited.
Can't wait.